Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Matt. Great to be
Good to
here.
see
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you everyone for taking the time out of your day today to join us here at Active Prospect for what should be an insightful discussion diving into data. Data is the driving force behind smarter lead generation, better buyer performance, and higher conversion rates. But how can businesses fully harness the power of data enrichment and scoring to enhance decision-making, filtering, and buying strategies? We've come to the right place. I'm joined today with Jennifer Linton, CEO and founder of Fenris. But before we jump into the action, a little housekeeping. There is a chat icon and a questions icon, as you can see on the right. Please use the chat section for general comments and interactions with other participants, and please use the question section for questions. We will take them throughout the webinar, and we appreciate questions, especially if you hear something as we're speaking. We will keep an eye on that throughout the entire webinar. Also, be on the lookout for a few polls during the session to help shape our discussion. We will leave time at the end to review and respond. And lastly, a link to today's recording will be emailed out tomorrow morning for reference and sharing with your colleagues. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Fraser. I am the GM of insurance here at Active Prospect. I've been in the lead generation and performance marketing space for the last 13 years or so, and I've been involved with many clients and advertisers alike who leverage data, filtering, and decision-making to level up their customer acquisition strategies. So when thinking about data and how data can positively impact your buying habits, the first person that came to my mind was Jennifer Linton. So without further ado, Jen, tell us a little bit about yourself and let's lay the foundation of what Fenris offers to the market.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, right back at you. I've known you for a little bit, a little while. The people in the data world tend to see each other often, but this is a real treat for us. So I'm Jen Linton. I am the founder and CEO of Fenris. Fenris is a company that brings together alternate next generation data types with our data scientists, and we create real-time intelligence, actionable intelligence that can be very, very important to improve your lead management and your customer acquisition processes. My background has been about the last 15 years in insurance, but I started out in strategy and mergers and acquisitions for really big companies. And then 15 years ago, I moved into startups, and Fenris is my third startup.
That's awesome. I love the startup feel and culture. So I'm right there with you. I much prefer startups myself. So where were you in your career then? And what drove you to come up with Fenris in the first place? Was there a aha moment for you that said to yourself, hey, this industry is missing something and I know what it is?
Well, I wish I were that prescient. I honestly just had the same problem that I think a lot of people still feel today. And it was back in 2010 when we were launching a company from scratch that was an insurance carrier called Elephant Insurance. It's alive in about 5 states today. And so coming up with everything from the very beginning, my job was I had a really big marketing budget, and I was tasked with bringing in good quality leads that would keep our agents busy, keep the phones ringing, and keep the bell ringing for sales. And that's a big problem to do from scratch. And I really wished at that time, I remember going to some of the more traditional data providers, and there was no differentiation. There was no competitive advantage that was available to us. And I think at that point I realized, there might be better ways to do it, but the technology wasn't there at the time. Even the data sets weren't available at the time. And so I just kind of filed that away and came back to that when I launched Fenris, because it's a problem that I've been wanting to tackle for a few years.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, especially as a buyer of leads, right? Conversion rate is everything when you're looking at your spend and what you're trying to back into. And so much of that information, and we're going to dive into this throughout the entire webinar. This will be a reoccurring topic, but so much of that data that you're buying, which is consumers putting in their own information, right? So a lot of times you'll see situations where a consumer may miss important pieces of information, right? Credit score could be a little bit inflated, or didn't put in there 2 DUIs, right? Right. So like what would happen is down funnel, those things do appear because there are obviously a lot more reporting and data cleansing that happens throughout the process. So I think one of the overarching topics that we're going to really hit on today is how you can, as a buyer, move that process to the front door, right? When you're actually buying your leads. So I think selfishly, since you and I are both heavily involved in insurance, let's start with how are carriers, specifically in the P&C space, leveraging Fenris?
Yeah, in the P&C space, we've got carriers, a variety, MGAs, agencies, brokers. We also have marketplaces and even other insurance intermediaries like embedded insurance providers that are connecting into our API. They are provisioned for one of our 20 or so data products that we have across auto, home, and small business. And they're using us for primarily 2 reasons. The first, as you mentioned, bringing information into that acquisition process earlier than ever before. It has been typical in insurance to have really robust data.
Yeah.
But that data is often applied, in my opinion, far too late to be useful in the distribution phase because it's coming in during the underwriting phase when there are some pretty significant investments already that have been made and getting that lead to that point, right, with rate call 1 or beyond. And so that's one of the areas they're trying to push that exploration and discovery of the data to earlier through our pre-fill products. The second way that these carriers and other MGAs and things like that are using us is for our predictive platform. So we have a very creative approach, I believe, and patent pending, which is pretty exciting because we took a unique approach in that we have these tremendous data assets and we built the machine learning layer on top of that, and clients can leverage and augment their own predictive analytics capabilities by calling to us. We maintain their models and help deploy those in the cloud so they uniquely can pull out their scores and their insights in real time. And then in that sense, they can optimize every single step of the customer acquisition journey for better close rates, for better lifetime values, better cost of acquisition, better lead buying. So there are several different places where they plug us in.
Yeah, and it's within insurance, and we'll kind of broaden the scope out to other verticals as well. But to stay here for just a second, there are so many different methods at play in insurance, and you're right. There's robust, way more data when you're looking at what consumers are comfortable putting into a lead form. But you have clicks, right? Super clicks. So clicks with data, embedded. We're now moving into rate call, right? So you're getting quotes shown to the consumer. Embedded has always been an interesting topic and one that over my career I've really had a keen sense of like, this is going to happen over time. Are you seeing more adoption in the embedded? And we can kind of, for everybody that doesn't know, we can kind of dig into what that means. But I do want to take a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of hot discussion around what embedded actually means. But for purposes of this call, and anyone wants to come at us, we can fight over that definition later. But we tend to think of it as a shared purchasing process. So a good example is many of our clients pursue this as a way of bringing down their total cost of acquisition through these affinity plays. Yeah. So if you're servicing mortgages, it's a great time with the mortgage to get the home insurance play that's required. And then why not? Why not try for the bundle, right, at the same time to get home and auto? So that's a nice way in which you can kind of lop off that traditional cost of acquisition that could be up to 1 time the policy premium value. And you can significantly get better close rates and a more trusted process through those shared purchase processes. Is that how you define embedded as well, Matt?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, to your point, there seems to be different thoughts or iterations of what that looks like. But I think the affinity process, that seems to be where we're seeing some movement. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that real quick because that's always an interesting topic for me. But let's broaden this conversation now to other verticals, right? I think, and I can tell you and everybody the verticals that we're in, but I see Fenris being able to provide other verticals outside of insurance with a real value add. So I just wanted to kind of let's go down that path a little bit and talk about the different verticals and how you can help.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was really fortuitous because I know that we're going to tease and talk about some of the products that we are going to offer together through Lead Conduit, which is exciting. So put a pin in that. That's coming shortly. But your team went and canvassed essentially, right? Your users in the financial services space, I believe some of the educational space. What other verticals did you canvass and found these opportunities where this data can be really helpful within a CRM or within
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're looking at the different verticals, like we have a huge home services business, and
yes.
that includes solar and roofing, contract work, higher education, legal and mass tort, all of the various sub verticals within insurance we service. And I see for all of those, right, there are pretty different approaches when it comes to lead buying, and there's different output and outcome. So you have home services that would be, geared to appointment setting, right? And estimates, getting someone to come out to your house. And then you have higher education, where that's a fairly large purchase decision that you have in your life.
Yes, having done it a couple of times, yes.
Yeah. And then you have insurance, right? Where it's 6 months to a year, you're looking at your car insurance going, I need to shop this around. I think I'm paying too much, right? So in all of these verticals, you have different levels of purchase and the decision to purchase, but they all start with a consumer who's interested, or potential consumer who's interested in a product or a service, and they are putting in their information, right? So I can see, if we talk about mortgage, right? I think I didn't even mention FinServ in that, but mortgage lenders, a perfect example, with credit scores and their house and their income, right? These are things that can be bundled into the payload at time of purchase of that lead, so that they can understand who's coming through on that lead flow. But maybe they want to segment it to somebody different in their contact center, or to a different loan officer. So segmentation, and even contact strategy might be different based on who that person is and what demographic they fit into.
And I think something that's uniquely shared, I guess I'll say, it's ubiquitous across all of those categories, is the speed to lead requirement.
Yeah.
So if you can't do this in sub-second fashion, right, you potentially lost out on your best lead. So you have to keep front of mind that you've got to be accurate, you've got to be relevant, you got to be really, really fast at this process.
Yeah. 100% agreed. Speed to lead, and that's something that's kind of carried on throughout the whole lifespan of lead generation. And as we move as an industry to add so much more from a technical perspective, there's always that thought of speed and adding too much on. But all of these things are now real time API calls and happen in sub 1 second time frames. So if anyone's thinking about, I would love to add something like this on, I can't take 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever, to get that information.
Oh, that's far too long, right?
Yeah. We do have a poll, and I think this is a good time to throw that out there. Are you leveraging data enhancements during your lead purchase experience today? And I think that'll be a good indicator of getting a gauge of how people may be using data already. And so,
I can't wait to see.
Yeah. And while we're talking about that, I want to move into a little bit of the lead conduit conversation now. So let me just move this over. So Lead Conduit is ActiveProspect's integration platform, providing buyers a seamless and efficient ability to connect sellers, marketing partners, and third-party solutions to enhance lead distribution, filtering, and real-time decision-making. The beauty of Lead Conduit as a buyer is you can add important steps into the lead buying process before you even purchase the lead. So think duplicate checks, trusted form, TCPA checks, API or AP, insights data, for example. Additionally, and this is exciting, we offer a curated marketplace to enable powerful add-ons like Fenris to your workflow process. So a huge benefit for buyers, especially in the insurance space, but anyone, is you can leverage Lead Conduit's marketplace to easily add on third-party services like Fenris without the hassle and time it takes to procure those services directly. We also offer BYOC, bring your own credentials. And Jen, I think this is a really exciting time, right? To add Fenris into that marketplace. In Lead Conduit's marketplace, you as a buyer can add customer 360 and property details to your workflow. So let's take a little bit of time and dig into what each of those are. And let's start with customer 360.
Yeah, to me, it's very exciting to see a platform like Lead Conduit. I really wish something like that had been around. So kudos to you guys for putting that together. I didn't have something like that around when I was buying leads. It's just before that time. But this is I think the unparalleled advantage for customers that are using Lead Conduit is you already do have a good ecosystem of add-ons. And so the customer does not have to create a separate relationship with any of those providers. And indeed, it's just added on with a click, which is fantastic. So this is really easy. It's usage-based. You can use it as much or as little as you'd like. There are no long-term commitments to using the data. So it's a great way to just test it out, try it, and see the lift that you get. So we decided with your input on what your customers across all your verticals were looking for, we chose our first two products for Lead Conduit. And the first one is a pretty broad customer 360. I think it just disappeared. Did it come back for you guys? On the screen. Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
Perfect. I mean, I know what it is, but you guys may not. So with customer 360, what we take in is we need the name and address of the individual. Behind the scenes, Fenris has a backbone of the number changes from week to week, but it's around 260 million adults, 130 million households. And so with that name and address, we've created a really good matching capability. So Matt can match back to Matthew Fraser, right? We've got all of that capability to bring that back and take what was essentially a big search down to one record. Mm-hmm. Once that's matched, there's 4 things that happen. We're cleansing and verifying the address. This is important for good hygiene within your system. So if it's going to be put into a lead management flow for remarketing, retargeting, if you want to use it for pre-fill or even for CRM, all of those things, you have to have really good quality data to start with. The second thing that happens is there's individual demographics. So you'll get information on that individual related to their marital status. Are they a definite or probable homeowner or a renter? How long have they been at that location? Very helpful as you talked about your home services group, because I noticed there's a question that's like, what data strategies for the different verticals? And that was one that sort of popped up as really interesting for the home vertical, right? To know a little bit more about the age or tenureship there. Mm-hmm. Then we go further and we give you the household demographics in this data product set. We'll let you know how many generations are living there and the age bands of the children, and identify up to 20 hobbies. In the old days, these hobbies used to come because of magazine subscriptions. Nobody does magazine subscriptions anymore unless you're my husband, who still gets a few running magazines. But for the most part, those are your online affiliate groups and other sources of data. And then the fourth category you're getting with Customer 360, this is really helpful for those in the financial services industries. You're getting the financial wherewithal of the household. So we exceed not just the individual, but this is returned on a household basis. Mm-hmm. The income, the net worth, and liabilities, including mortgage data, up to and including the name of the title company, the lender, balances and things like that. So that's all aggregated under one single poll. You don't have to go multiple places to get that data. And you can take as much or as little as you'd like, but it's all at a set price. So that's part of that innovative approach, right? There's no more nickeling and diming. There's a set poll. And from that, you can get a pretty good, robust view of who is that customer on the other end of this contact.
Yeah, and I really do love that we were able to get this into a bundled payload. And for those of you who are interested in exploring this, getting that data pulled in and appended to the lead, that is what we're talking about, right? And then pushing that into your CRM. So you may have to have a couple additional fields added to your CRM to handle these different pieces of data, but all of that would come over to your CRM, so you would have them on a lead by lead basis.
Excellent. The second one then is property details. And this is an aggregation, there's about 3,200, give or take, counties in the US, and each one of them has their own process at a local level of the assessor collecting the information for taxing purposes. So this is fundamentally a part of but not in totality, some of the sources for the property details, so public data. Again, we start with cleansing and verifying that address, so good hygiene going in. It helps with your deduping and things like that later if you've been really cautious and proactive about getting good data on the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Building characteristics like the square footage, the type of construction, the year it's built, roof, those are really helpful in the home insurance space, right? Because that's the questions you try to ask a homeowner just to start to qualify them. And oftentimes, getting a third-party validated source can be slightly more accurate and more streamlined than even asking the individual. Something people like about us is we'll actually include if there's 3.5 baths. We don't tell you there's 4 bathrooms, but we're giving you some more information about the half status. So that's a little bit more nuanced and helpful. And then there's the valuation records. This is for the market and the assessed value. So you're getting a land and an improvement value. If anyone's ever checked their tax bill from the county, oftentimes they'll break down your residence into those two, and that helps you see over time more information on that house, and the mortgage data is included there as well. So that's that data package that's coming right on through in totality, like you said, as a payload. So you can pick up as much or as little as you'd like.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I could just see that as such a value add, specifically if buyers today are getting short form data, or even within even full form data, they may be missing a bunch of those data points that could be easily added on and added to the CRM as well. So decisioning can happen in all of those places, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. If I know up front, there's 3 things that really just improves your customer and your agent experience. You don't have to go through the questions that you can validate. How much better is it? Hey, I see here, I'm going to pull up some information. Is that okay with you? Sure, right? Make it better process. I see you have this. And they can then feel like they're really in a trusted environment because you're investing in getting that quote right with them, right? You're not just relying on that self-supply data. The second thing it does is sometimes it can be more accurate as well. And third, if you know that information at the get-go, you can structure the rest of the customer journey to optimize that lead. If you don't have a product for that particular individual based on a profile or a risk classification or pre-screening, depending on the approach you're taking, then you can absolutely try to transform that lead into something that you can optimize downstream. So be it prioritizing it, or you might have to resell that lead if it simply doesn't fit what you have in-house to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to make that decision up front without incurring the costs potentially, you're saving money, right? So there are like you said, moving consumers downstream, right? As you're talking, if you're an agent and you uncover something that you're like, this is not going to be a great fit, but we can move this to somebody else. Especially Now we've seen carriers that have, preferred, non-standard. They have paths that they
Yes,
can take.
especially that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm so happy that the platform Lead Conduit is just a great tool overall, because you're getting access to this in real time at that moment of need, right? It's not necessarily added on much later and come in tandem. That's unprecedented. Again, where were you guys,
Yeah.
15 years ago? When I
Yeah.
was
I mean,
doing
and seriously, I mean, there's so much that happens in those first 3 to 4 seconds, right? Of there's a lead submitted and you're in the process in milliseconds to
Mhm.
determining how much am I going to pay for this lead typically, right? So we offer real-time bidding based on, multiple different facets, but also it's like, maybe what is coming in the door is a dupe, right? And you're like, I've already paid for this. I don't want to pay for this again, right? And 10 times out of 10 times, a consumer doesn't want to be called this with the same offer just because that lead is being sold multiple times. So
Yeah,
it's really it's a gatekeeper, if you will. That's one of the benefits. There are multiple, but that's one of the benefits is having that control way up funnel, so that by the time that lead is coming through the process, you're fairly confident as a buyer, this is going to be, a good consumer for our product or service, right? And it might,
yeah. It goes back to something you and I have started using more often, which is it was all about growth for a while there, right? And then it was about no growth.
yeah,
For
I
a
mean,
while.
yeah, like
And now we're back to growth, but differently in a way
yeah. So
that'll be profitable.
if you look back 5, 6 years ago, it was pedal to the metal growth, right? It was let's get as much volume as you can. We're going to work
Yeah,
it, and that's okay. And then throughout COVID, so many external factors came into play, and consolidation happened pretty quickly. And so everybody kind of shifted their thinking to profitability, period.
yeah.
And it was a interesting time for everybody involved, but I think a lot happened behind the scenes that shaped how things are moving today, right? I think it gave everybody a moment to pause and look at what they're doing and how their buying strategies exist in
Yes. Yeah. There was a lot of reflection, a lot of
total.
retrospection.
Right, right, right. And then there was also that uh, you were unsure, right? When was this going to come back? And if we got a shot to bring this back, how are we going to do this so that we can grow and be profitable? And I think that's where we're at today, right? It's based on what I'm seeing in the market, we're back to growth. But like you said, there's definitely this overlay of profitability, which is good, right? This is the good blend that I think was necessary throughout this process. And
Well, it's right where we want to be. It's the
yeah,
best, right?
yeah,
Because nobody wants this endless pouring out, right? Like the hoses left on at the house. Nobody wants their marketing dollars running into the ground. But when you can find those pockets and exploit your competitive advantage, that's where I think insurance and other verticals are really going in terms of bringing in the best practices, having the best quality data, making good predictions, and taking advantage of the technologies, the platforms. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, uh, Before we jump into, well, let's go here first. Let's talk about what differentiates Fenris, and then I think that can lead into my next question for you. But let's start there.
Sure. Yeah. I think, when you look at large data companies that are out there, we know a few players.
Sure.
Um, there's a few good incumbents. We set out to build Fenris in a slightly different way. So, number one, we're somewhat product and industry agnostic. So, because we didn't start with, hey, we're home insurance and we're going to have property data, we said, no, let's focus on the name and address of that applicant or customer, because that's universal. There's always going to be one. And from there, you can then see that the way we've architected our solutions, name and address will then unlock predictions, data payloads, and more. The second thing that's really neat is we don't rely on contributory data sets. So we don't lock anyone out of use of the data. We went to alternate data sources, public, private, proprietary, and we don't scrape anything down. So our data set is really one of these great assets that we built to leverage. This is the big reason, number 3, why we're different, is we're not just a data company. We're leveraging that data in the machine learning models. And quite often, I'm the first to say, let's disintermediate some of the data pulls, right? If we can predict what's going to happen downstream and we can find a more optimal path, let's do that. Because one size does not fit all. We should probably not be treating every single lead precisely the same if we have better intelligence about how we could actually optimize that outcome.
I'm glad I asked the question the way I did, because that was the next point, right? Is everybody's talking about AI and machine learning. What are you guys doing there?
Yeah. So to be honest, and clear, we do power our predictive. We call it predictive AI to lean into the AI hype, but it's machine learning and data science, and it has been an art and a science for quite some time. And we're now to the point where tens of millions of outcomes have informed our base models. So we've got a really good, robust starting point. Many other providers are coming back with generative AI, right? Or the latest, agentic AI. Can't get anywhere without hearing and seeing that. Those solutions can also be powered by some of the predictions that we provide, but in general, we're very focused on the hard science of building out for our customers a robust model that they can then test. Perhaps if they have internal data science resources, this could augment. And then we will take that hard work, the 70% that data scientists don't like to do, cleansing, normalizing, maintaining the models, redeploying the models, retuning the models, right? That once you get a great model, you want to try to offload some and automate some of that in a productionalized environment. And that's what Fenris does really well for our clients.
That's awesome. Let's take a moment here. I'm going to look at the Q&A section. I see Justin Jewett asked a great question, and I actually would love to know the answer to this question too. Can you append data to the click using IP address?
Oh, using IP address. I love these kinds of questions. That's how we build some of our new products. We can't today, but maybe check back.
Yeah, so
there's certain limitations.
Let's look at that. Yeah. What are some good identifiers to help, or fields perhaps that help get this data in?
Yeah, for us, there are bridges over. Like if let me start with what we do. We do name and address. We also do anonymized scoring. So if you prefer not to move into like some of that basic data that we have, right, that helps with the fields, we can also base it off of information that might come as part of that lead form. So we can just model based on that self-submitted data. But it is always a bigger lift when we're able to implement some of our data, name and address. Clients have come to us and said, I have a telephone number. Telephone numbers are tricky because of some of the restrictions and the cell phone use. At best, you're going to get a percentage. You're never going to get a really high percentage, but maybe you can get 50, 60% to bridge back. And then once we get the name and address, then we can go from there. So, with IP address, that's pretty challenging. I will say it would be something definitely to look into. I'm happy to always look into that because we're always continuing to get better and better, but it's not something we offer at this moment.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Justin. That was a great one. When we talk about data enrichment and pre-fill, right, I think it immediately sends me to like super clicks, for instance, right? And for those of you that have heard the term, welcome. For those of you who haven't, I'll gladly explain. So a lot in insurance, specifically P&C, there's a methodology where you have a lead form, you're collecting the data, but at the end, at the thank you page, you have a click wall or a click panel that has multiple different brands that you as a consumer can say, carrier A, I really like them. And you click onto that. Your information that you've already pre-filled goes into the environment, which is the carrier's lander typically, where they will collect any additional information. So there's a couple things here that I want to talk about, maybe 3 things actually, that this whole thing, both Lead Conduit and Fenris can optimize. One is getting that information over to the carrier's environment, right? So I'm going to let's give a real world kind of example here, right? I'm at lunch and I'm like, oh, I just saw my insurance policy, my insurance. And I'm like, I'm paying way too much for this. I need to shop.
It's going up. It's tough.
Yeah. So like at lunch, I'm putting in I'm shopping, putting my information in, and then I get to one of those click walls and I'm like, oh, let me just see what this, and within those click walls, sometimes there's a, what they call one quote. Maybe there's not, but you go through that process and you get into carrier A's environment and there's nothing. Everything that you just put in is gone. And you go to carrier one, right? So you look at friction as a buyer, friction can generate higher intent, but it also can drop, can include fall off, right? I'm busy and now oh man, I can't put all this information back in. I'll do it later. And later could be never or much, much later. So being able to bring in that information so that that user experience continues through the process is one facet, and Lead Conduit can help with that. The second is that's when we can also append additional data so that can even lower the number of fields that me as a consumer would be going through and filling out. Because the ultimate goal here is to get a quote, right? It's like, look, what can I do here? How can I get my insurance lower? By having this process, you're taking the friction down a notch, but you're also increasing the likelihood of the information being accurate enough that you can get a quote. That's just one of the examples that I think about when I think about clicks and super clicks. But the same applies to leads.
Yeah, if someone has, I mean, this is a no-brainer for me. If someone has already said, I have a preference for your brand, right? And let's say you're able to assess up front, yes, you've done some segmentation or pulled a score. Yeah, we think that we've got a product that's in the family of what they can buy. So we want this. If you look at some of the stats of our clients that do use the pre-fill, right, to augment and streamline that quoting process, they're getting a 4x completion rate by telling the consumer, hey, we're going to invest in this experience for you, and we're going to pull from a third-party data set. And they're like, yes, let's do it. Let's do the fast track method. And they were, it really does help with the abandonment and the feeling that a customer has once they've already picked your brand is, hey, we're looking out for you. Can you imagine how that then in their brain sort of extends as well to how it will be to be a customer, right? If you can meet them where they need to be.
Yeah, it's a really great point. So let's, unless you want to dive into any of that further, we can shift gears a little bit to.
Yeah, I think you did a great job covering that.
Okay,
that's a really good point.
So lead scoring, man, I know this is an exciting topic. I've heard multiple different verticals and companies within those verticals exploring lead scoring in a multitude of different ways. It could be contact strategies, nurturing, close, like whatever that is, bind or product sold. But let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of lead scoring and how lead scoring can create cost savings, efficiencies, better customer experience.
You bet. Yeah. So what we have to do when we start out is lead scoring is a pretty well understood term in our industry. And we actually were off-site last week and a customer visited with us and they said, we scored leads. And when they broke it down, what they said is, if you own a home, plus 50, because they're creating their in-house model, right? If you have multiple cars, plus 20. If you don't have any accident, if you have an accident, minus 10, right? Sort of a thing. And putting that together created a rule-based lead scoring methodology. Now that is certainly better than nothing because that gives you a sense for you're attracting hopefully the kinds of customers that you want. But what it lacks is the sophistication that's available now through dynamic modeling. So what we did is we actually thought to ourselves, there's got to be more. Number one, we want to use more information than what's just submitted on the form.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that data asset comes in that Fenris has, because all of those data elements, it was something in the trillions of data features that we have, because we were calculating it, number of rows by number of fields. Anyway, we're very transparent and open about what we leverage in those models. So carriers should never be concerned. We're insurance people. We do understand a lot of the sensitive areas, and those just don't need to be part of the model, right? They just don't need to even be in there, even though this is in the distribution space. So that's important. But yeah, you can actually create really good custom models, and I call it custom, but it's on a platform that's automated and repeatable. So here's a good example. We have clients that come to us and say, we have an in-house model. We want to test yours against our in-house model because it's maybe onerous, or maybe it's not getting tuned as often as it should. We're thinking that there might be a better way to do it. Not that the old way is not working, but we think that there's more optimization to pursue. So that client could come to us, and what we would ask to do is, until we can't do it anymore, we will keep doing it until we're inundated. But we do a free POC. So we essentially say, give us a month of your data, just the name and address and the target variable. This is the key. So what are you trying to optimize for? Are you trying to optimize for close rate? Are you trying to optimize for bundles or lifetime value? Are you even reaching further and trying to optimize for lack of churn? Like, are they still there, right, to renew after the first term? As long as you have that target variable and you can associate it back, we will bring our data to bear. And usually within a week or two, we're back with your first model. Version 1.0, again, complementary. It's a good example. That's the top left one there. So we've trained the model using our base models, and we're able to create quintiles, 5 buckets. So when that lead comes in, you're getting a 1 to 5 score. And look what happened. We held back that model. We held back 20% of the data from that model. And that's the second one. So this model was trained, and then it sees data it's never seen before, and it scored it. And yet, look at how accurately it predicted the outcomes. So essentially, a client came to us, and great example, we're at a 14% close rate today, but we'd love to see if we can improve that by prioritizing and doing some different workflows and configurations, that really emphasize those with high propensity to buy. Every 1% improvement in close rate, millions in premium. So it pays for itself very quickly. Happy to do a quick look for any customers that want to see what does that latest machine learning layer look like. How does Fenris differentiate itself in offering more value than just the data, right? So this is I hope to see a few different inquiries on this, because it's really a no-risk look at what you could be doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You guys, I'm a huge proponent of Fenris and what you guys bring to the industry, not just to the data, but how you guys interact with potential clients and clients alike. So for that, just give you kudos.
Right back at you. You guys are terrific. Yeah, thanks.
I do want to throw out a poll here, just so it's out there, and that is: are you interested in continuing the conversation to learn more about lead conduit in Fenris? So if you want to fill that out, we'll keep that open for the rest of the webinar. All right. I think do you want to bring anything else up? Because I want to jump into LeadCon. If not.
I'm super excited. I mean, who wasn't excited about Vegas?
Well, maybe a few people. We do it a lot. But yeah, if you are attending LeadsCon, let us know in the chat. We would love to meet with you and continue the conversation. We will both be in attendance along with the rest of our companies. I think we have a really good amount of coverage this year, so it should be a great show. So we're also excited to announce, Jen, that between ActiveProspect and Fenris, we'll be holding a happy hour at the lobby bar on Tuesday.
Happy.
So it should be awesome.
I think it's got a casino night theme too going.
It does, yep.
Which is fitting given that it's Vegas and the odds are for us.
And it's at a great location right near the elevator. So if you're there, RSVP. I think we might share the invite in the chat if we have it. If not, we'll make sure we get it to you. But it's 4:30 to 6:30, I believe, and it'll be like-minded people all talking about this stuff, and also just be great to meet you. So
yeah, just a little bit of a casual get together there.
yeah, perfect. Are there any other questions we see in the Q&A that we want to jump on? I think
we don't get to all of them. I'm sure we can write.
Yeah,
we could probably write something afterwards.
And while you're looking, I will also plug. I will be joining a panel at LeadsCon with LendingTree and Gainsco for a deep dive into all things impacting the insurance industry, from compliance to tariffs. Ever changing, I'll tell you. So it's going to be a great session to join.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, it's always something, I swear.
That's one thing. This is never boring.
It's never boring. No, it's never boring. All right, cool. Well, Jen, I appreciate your time today. It was fantastic to see you and talk to you. And I hope that everybody found this to be an interesting conversation and leads to further conversations.
Thank you. You and your team are top notch. And in terms of where we're headed and what's going next, I'm glad we could tease a few of the ideas, but I think also my thoughts over the next couple of years, because there's so much change, and keeping ahead of it is sort of a never-ending adventure.
That is absolutely correct. It's a fun part of the industry too, right? It is ever changing. So being on top of it and having a lot of really good knowledge and thought leaders in our space is just super important. So I appreciate your time. And a big thank you to everyone for taking the time out of your day, for participating in this webinar. Your questions, interactions help these webinars come to life. And thank you, Jen, for providing some really great content. I hope you all are walking away with a better understanding of how you can leverage data to level up your lead buying strategies. Please mark your calendars and join us on Tuesday, April 8th for our next webinar. This one from the home services perspective, state of the industry, live from LeadsCon. So we'll have a link in the chat to register for that. And lastly, if you would like to continue the conversation, please reach out to us via the contact us link that is in the chat or by answering our polls. Again, thank you to everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you next time.
Till then, thanks.